morning, everybody. We're so grateful you all have chosen to come spend your mornings with us. We have a fantastic panel lineup. I am so excited for you to get to know these folks that I am lucky enough to sit here with this morning. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk today really about the impact of a wish. You all are here because you've heard the stories, right? You all know the emotional side, the transformative power of that child's wish come true. But what we don't talk as deeply and as thoroughly about as the demonstrable impact. So we've got two wish parents here who are just incredibly impressive professionals in their own right, as well as two of our very noteworthy physicians who have studied really decades of work and with us and wishes. And I think when you leave here, hopefully you'll have some good questions. We'll leave time at the end for Q&A. But as we get started, just to introduce myself, my name is Kim Elenez. I am the CEO here at Make-A-Wish in North Texas. And this is just, it's just an absolute wonderful time to be here. Okay, let's see here. I'll start with introductions, and then I'm going to have them tell their stories so we can get to know them a little bit better. First thing, sitting right here next to me is Kris Russell. If you were at Wish Night this year, Kris probably looks familiar to you. His son, Austin, had a wish to have a Survivor TV show experience. But before that, that's not the sum total of your life. You're an incredibly impressive professional. So Kris is an experienced environmental consultant. He's recognized globally for implementing sustainable solutions that reduce costs, increase access to capital, improve resilience, and enrich employee and community engagement, and protect natural resources. As the former environmental program manager for the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, Kris led DFW to become the first carbon-neutral airport in North America and won the 2020 United Nations Global Climate Action Award. While helping clients meet their environmental, social, and governance, or we all are familiar with ESG stuff going on, right? Goals, Kris applies a systems mindset and helps organizations solve problems holistically to improve sustainability and drive positive impacts. His expertise includes creating enterprise sustainability programs that align with strategic plans. Thank you for being here, Kris. Thank you. Yes, thank you. So next is Mercedes Ramirez Johnson. Mercedes' story is truly one that you would think only Hollywood could write, but it is truly incredible. She'll share that with you in a moment. But first, in 1995, Mercedes Ramirez Johnson narrowly survived a commercial airplane crash that killed 160 people, including her parents. She presents her proprietary second chance living concept and an innovative mindset and approach with a proven track record to organizations such as General Electric, ExxonMobil, Microsoft, NASA, Chevron, and various branches of the armed forces. Impressive group. Before becoming a speaker, Mercedes spent nearly a decade in high-level sales in pharmaceutical and medical software industries. A record-breaking multi-million-dollar producer, she became the youngest female and sole Latino account executive at Kerner Corporation. She is an active leader in philanthropic organizations advocating for special needs children and children's health initiatives, notably Make-A-Wish and the National MPS Society, which you'll learn about here in a moment as well. Mercedes and her story have been the subject of considerable national and international media coverage. Her extensive media experience includes appearances on BBC, National Geographic, Discovery Health, and recurring guests on numerous nationally syndicated daytime talk shows on NBC and ABC. In addition, numerous national magazines and major market newspapers have run cover stories and special interest policies about her, and she was recognized as one of the country's top young Hispanic up-and-comer by People Magazine's Spanish edition, People en Español. Mercedes and her family live here in Dallas. Thank you for being here, Mercedes. All right, well, if you have been around Make-A-Wish here in North Texas for even 5 minutes, my next panelist is certainly someone you're very familiar with. Dr. Brown, Dr. Kendall Brown, has 30 years of experience treating children with digestive disorders. As of very recently, he's the past medical director of pediatric gastroenterology for Children's Health Legacy Hospital in Northern Markets. Trained at UT Southwestern Medical School in Dallas, he did his pediatric residency and pediatric gastroenterology training at Children's Medical Center in Dallas before serving as faculty in the same institution. He's been an active, dedicated member of the North Texas pediatric community since, and has served on both Make-A-Wish North Texas Board, Make-A-Wish America Board. Dr. Brown is also the founding member of the Make-A-Wish America's National Medical Advisory Committee, to which he still serves today, and is the primary medical case reviewer for all of North Texas Wishes. And I can tell you, up until recently, Dr. Brown reviewed every single case for medical safety and various sort of policy adherences here in North Texas. He has personally touched thousands of wishes. Thank you for being here, Dr. Brown. And then, of course, Dr. Anup Patel. So grateful that you have flown in from Ohio to be with us today. Dr. Patel is board certified in neurology with special qualifications in child neurology. In addition, he is the board certified in epilepsy and child neurophysiology. He is the president for the Child Neurology Foundation and Board of Directors. He is the vice chair of the Quality Committee for the American Academy of Neurology. He is a medical director of quality in the Center for Clinical Excellence at Nationwide Children's Hospital. He's a professor in clinical pediatrics and neurology at the Ohio State University College of Medicine. He has interests in child neurology, pediatric epilepsy, and quality improvement. And I would also say that he has most certainly been a part of hundreds, if not thousands, of wishes. His research that we're going to talk a lot about today was published in the esteemed Nature Medical Journal and has landed him on various national media platforms, including NPR's All Things Considered with Ari Shapiro. Thank you for being here this morning. I am no Ari Shapiro, but I will do my best to not screw this up for all of us. So let's get started by each of you telling a little bit about your stories so our group here can kind of get to know you and a little bit of frame of reference. Kris, if you would get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kim, and nice to meet all of you this morning. An honor to be on this panel. My education is in environmental science, so naturally kind of a curious person. I think this topic of kind of the science of a wish is really fascinating to me. So the title I'm really proud of is Austin's Dad. So Kim shared a little bit about that background. So his journey began when he was less than 2 years old. He'd gone through two really long-term hospitalizations for a surgery to deal with craniosynostosis was his condition. And so he had those couple of big surgeries when he was just an infant, and then a third major surgery and hospitalization when he was about 12 years old, which is actually how we got connected to Make-A-Wish. His neurosurgeon nominated him when he was 12. That was, again, his third procedure. He'd gone through quite a few other issues as he was growing up. But that point was a pivot really in the trajectory of his life. So I'm excited today when we kind of share our stories to tell you about, he's healthy. He's a 22-year-old college student. He's pursuing a degree in radio, television, film here at University of North Texas. In fact, I missed an opportunity. I should have drug him out of bed this morning and brought him in here. But anyway, I'm fascinated to kind of hear the discussion and the topic because the struggle that Austin went through was real, and Make-A-Wish gave him and our entire family a way to kind of navigate a really challenging moment. But then for him, he had like a 3-year treatment plan and some other things that he went through following that big surgery. But I think the really fascinating thing is that he has not been hospitalized since that wish was granted. So I know Dr. Patel kind of talks about that and some of the research, but yeah, he, never had another hospitalization. He became a self-advocate for his own health care. All the challenges he faced after, 12 years old, he's been like an active participant in his health care. So I'm confident that this experience changed him and led to that. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Mercedes.
Good morning, everyone. I, too, am very honored to be here serving on this panel today. the Make-A-Wish process for my family was completely life-altering. I have 2 sets of twin boys, both sets fraternal. My older set of twin boys, perfectly healthy, rambunctious, sports, all the activities, all the things. And my younger set of twin boys that were born in 2008 were born with a very rare condition that the older they get, the more their entire body goes into failure, organ failure, cardiac problems, pulmonary problems, problems in every major system of their body. And so when that first initial diagnosis was given, of course, our world as their parents was completely turned upside down, because you're not supposed to have a child that is born with an expiration date, and unfortunately that was our situation. For my son Dorian, he lived until he was 10. His little brother, his twin brother Winnie, Christopher Wynn, I'll make him sound sophisticated, but we always call it Dorian Winnie. Winnie lived until he was 6. And we didn't have the chance, and it wasn't even in our mental capacity to even think about getting Winnie a wish. His cardiologist had suggested it, and we thought, you know what, there's so many other kids that need wishes, and he is so far down the road that we don't know if he would even be able to comprehend what's going on, and you know, he can't travel, this, that, and the other. So with Winnie, we missed that opportunity because we felt it was, you know, well, if Winnie gets a wish, there's going to be another kid who doesn't. By the time we got to that point with Dorian, our pulmonologist basically had a little sit down, come to Jesus meeting with us, and he was like, okay, that crazy stuff that you thought with Winnie, Dorian deserves a wish, and it doesn't matter how many other kids in this area need a wish as well, they're going to make it happen, not just for Dorian, but for the other kids. And so for Dory, the main thing that always calmed him down when he was in the ER, or if he was at home having a really rough day, or if he was at school, was listening to Neo, the R&B superstar crooner. The man, the little guy had the taste of a middle-aged Chicago man, but you know, but whatever calmed him down, we were not questioning the lyrics, we were not questioning the double entendres, anything. If it calmed him down, then Neo was playing consistently, and quite frankly, that's much better than Barney or other things that are forms of torture for us parents. And Dory fell very ill. He had to be hospitalized for over a month and a half. Towards the end of that month and a half, we had already started the wish process, just finding out about it, telling them like, hey, as long as it has anything to do with Neo, t-shirts, or if he could just meet him through FaceTime, we'd be so excited. And so that wish went into hyper power drive, and within less than a month, Dory was released from the hospital. The doctors told us, we've done everything that we can do. Take him home, love on him, we'll keep him as comfortable as we can, but just make the best of every single day that you have left with him. And so that's when the organization stepped in and did a, what's it called, a speed wish or a rush wish. Rush. I haven't had my coffee yet this morning, folks. And Dory was released from the hospital. Neo came to our home the morning after he had hosted the MTV Movie Awards live in Los Angeles. And he gave us a private concert for Dorian. And just to see the look on Dorian's eyes, at first he was like, yeah, this is familiar. It's kind of different than when you guys always play it on the speakers. But then you could see the wheels turning, and he actually connected like, oh wait, this is actually Neo. This man who's singing to me is the real deal. And you know, spoiler alert, after that, Dory lived an additional 2 years. And so that the power of the wish was true and was real, and it still lives with us to this day. So I will tell anybody and everybody about how it affected us, because it's not magic, it's not miracles, it's science as we know now. So thank you for letting me share my story.
I'm going to make this not about me at all. I've been involved in Make-A-Wish since 2008, and the end point of today's journey, or I should say the beginning, the tip-off point of today's discussion, actually began at the 30th anniversary Make-A-Wish event that was at Disney World. That was 13, 14 years ago. And at that point in time, I met a gentleman, Jim Fauner, who's a hematologist oncologist in Michigan. And he and I were commenting on a presentation that had been done earlier that day where Make-A-Wish was trying to redefine the qualifying criteria for wishes. And it was very clear that the person doing the presentation did not understand medicine. And the definitions that they were providing for critical conditions, they just didn't understand what they were talking about. And Dr. Fauner and I had a unique position. We were one of us, or several few of us, who were physicians who had actually been board chairs in the country. And we started the conversation about the necessity of bridging the gap between medicine and this lay organization that was doing wonderful things for children, had been doing it for 3 decades, but we raised the question about how we can bridge the gap between medical knowledge and Make-A-Wish, because whether Make-A-Wish liked it or not, they were in healthcare. Every one of their patients was a critically ill child. And the conversation began at that point in time, and fortunately, the National Board saw to it that we would form a medical advisory board of 20 or so esteemed colleagues across the nation that were multidisciplinary, many of them chairs of departments at university programs, and a very esteemed group of individuals that, quite honestly, I really had no business being in that room because I was humbled by the presence of my peers. But as an offshoot of that, travel criteria on the safety of travel, which had never been defined either with the FAA or any entity as to what was safe for complex medical conditions to get on an airplane. And that was a sentinel event in air travel in general, but in combination with the CDC and the NIH and American Academy of Pediatrics and the FAA, we came up with the white paper document that is the benchmark of air travel for critically ill children. We transport more children in an airplane than any other entity in the world. I mean, think about it. More than CareFlight, more than anybody else, we put more critically ill children on airplanes than anybody else. But another offshoot of that conversation, which I'm not going to steal Dr. Patel's thunder, was what are we doing? What impact does Make-A-Wish have in the medical outcome of these children? And it's a genius. Dr. Patel's very elegant study, very elegant paper, simple in its execution, profound in its message. And I'm not going to take it any further than to say we had no idea how much we were doing.
Thanks, Dr. Brown. So, my story is really based a lot from their stories. Their experiences and what the stories they would tell really informed us being able to do this study. So when I first got involved with Make-A-Wish, and we were talking about it this morning a little bit, I had no idea what the organization did. I always had this conception that this is an organization for kids with cancer that are going to need this. And so never really crossed my mind as a medical professional, as a neurologist. Specifically, I take care of kids with epilepsy. And then they came to present one day at our hospital, and I remember sitting there, and they were talking about the kids who were eligible. And I turned to my social worker at the time, her name was Janie. I said, Janie, these are our kids. Like, we got to do this. I didn't realize they could be, getting wishes. So I did. But again, I had no idea what I was doing. We would send a kid, they'd pick something, they'd come back. And then the first kid comes back, and he's remarkably better. Another kid comes back, and she's remarkably better. And I'm like, well, I didn't do anything here. So I was like, okay, But then, very similar to Kris's story, my background and what I do from work really align because it's about efficiencies of care and decreasing costs and, more importantly, decreasing utilization, right? Like, I do that throughout my work with the epilepsy kids. I don't want the epilepsy kids to have to come to the emergency department and get admitted. They need to be at home. They need to be at school. You know, that's their goal. So then I thought, well, gosh, is there something with this? Because I, again, didn't do anything. And I'll tell you, if I can, a specific story that then really kicked it off. There was this young man who had referred to me. I often see the kids that others can't get under control because that's my area of expertise. And so I always tell families, I got a 1% to 3% chance of ever making your child seizure-free. By the time you come to get and see me, that's it. So we set the standard right away. It doesn't mean we don't try, but it means that we've got to really dig in. This young man was so polite, even having 50 to 100, 150 seizures a day. His cognition is starting to decline. He's not able to participate in sports or school as much. And throughout these visits, he'd be like, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir. I mean, I love this kid. And then, it was right around the same time I got involved in Make-A-Wish. I was like, okay, let's get you a wish. And I was petrified, you guys, of sending this kid on an airplane to Los Angeles from Columbus, which is what his wish was, to meet the LA Clippers and, hang out at Universal Studios. So I said, I told his parents, I said, I know he's 50 seizures a day. I'm not going to change anything because I don't want to make it worse, right? Because clearly I'm not making it better. He goes, has a fabulous time. He comes back because I said, I'm going to see you literally the first Thursday you come back because that's when I do my clinic. He comes in and he's talking and I'm like, how was it? It's great. And then, how are your seizures? And he kind of has a weird smirk on his face and looks at his mom and dad. I'm like, what? And I, in my head, are thinking, oh, he's not taking his medicines or, something. He's like, I haven't had a seizure since I went on that trip. And he was bright again. He was happy. And I said, oh my gosh, this has got to be something. So I took this love of what I was seeing with the wishes and the involvement, and I said, let's prove it. And so that's kind of why we got into what we did.
Each of these stories have all of their own sort of special paths forward. But, and we've all heard it said before, and I wake up sort of every day and kind of go to bed every night with this knowledge of, yeah, wish is a really nice thing, it's a really nice thing. We get to, create these experiences. Our wish team, many of our program team is here. I mean, they will do these trips and these things like nobody else. It's just so custom and so beautiful, but it's not just a nice thing. It's a potentially necessary thing, right? So talk a little bit more, if you would, Dr. Patel, about how you ultimately said, okay, I'm going to go do some research, how you got the idea for it, the methodology, and really the output of that.
Yeah, and I think that's really the importance of this, because in my world, observation is informative and can lead to discovery. And as a guy who does both clinical work and research, that's really where I got my passion. Answering questions like, what if it's more than a nice thing to do? Okay, how do we do that? So we had a team of folks that were doing a similar project, again, around epilepsy and emergency department visits. And I said, team, this is my research team. I was like, hey, why don't we look at this for wishes? The intervention is the wish. It's not medicine X or Y. The treatment is this. And we have a wish date. We know it all, right? And so we originally were going to use our kids, but then didn't seem to have enough of them, right? Because we were just getting started. And somebody had the idea, I was like, well, can we tap into all the kids at Nationwide Children's Hospital who got wishes in this time frame? So we did. So we took 496, to be exact, kids over a time frame. And we said, okay, just because something got better after doesn't mean it was because of this. So we use this term, causation doesn't always equal correlation. So you can't just say, oh yeah, look at after their wishes, their ED visits went down. Woohoo, we're pat ourselves on the back. That wasn't good enough science, right? Because that's not good sound methodology. So I took the team and they were really dynamic with their stats. And so we use this specific model that allows you to be able to kind of create a group that's similar to the group that got the intervention but didn't. And so we took these 500 kids who got wishes, and we found kids in our electronic health record database who were very similar. So they had to have the same disease. They had to be within 3 years of the same age. They had to be the same gender. They had to have treatment during that same 2-year time frame. And we took all those kids and put them in a database. And the simple question was, how likely were you to have decreased utilization, which means ED visits, have to come to the hospital unplanned, go to the urgent care, if you were a wish kid compared to the kid who didn't have a wish? And I'll talk about that a little, because that is where we saw some profound changes. So if you were in the wish kid group, you were twice to 2.5 times more likely to be able to stay at home, not come to the ED, not come to the hospital, than if you were a non-wish kid in that same time frame. So it's as close to apples comparison as you can. We call the statistical model difference in difference for those that really want to know the details. And then we decide we're going to do this, but we're going to look at costs, right? Because healthcare is expensive, as you all know. And I do that a lot of quality improvement work, and that's where I resonated with what you do, because we can't waste healthcare, right? Like, we are stewards of our healthcare. So I said, well, let's look at that. Maybe it's better on the families, or their insurance plans, perhaps. And we said, well, let's factor in the cost of a wish, right? Because people like you generously give to the organization that allows the work to be done and the wishes to happen. Without it, nothing happens. But that's an investment. Now, it's not one that you're expecting a return on. I get that. But it's a cost. So we factored that in. We said, you know what? Same kind of concept. If you're a wish kid, over that 2-year time frame, what was your healthcare dollars? Did it go down, and by how much, compared to those who didn't get wishes after, and whatever, we said 10 grand or something, I forget the number exactly. And still, you were twice as likely to have less healthcare dollars spent, even after factoring for the wish, if you were a wish kid, compared to those that were not wish kids. So for the first time, we saw there is a solid impact. It is real. And it can be translated into something that we can all resonate, and lots of others do research on. And it was amazing. When we first saw those results, I actually said to my team, run it again. And then I said, run it again, because we had to be perfect, right? We knew what we were sitting on was transformative. And it just aligned with everything they say. It aligns with the spirit, the hope, the power, the excitement. It does translate into actually improved healthcare.
As I was, thinking about this morning and starting to prepare, I did just some basic research on average hospitalization costs. And so, as many of you know, most of our kids, unfortunately, have some form of cancer. The average hospital visit for a child with cancer is approximately 11 to 12 days and over $40,000. So our ability to be able to limit to take one away is not only transformative, but from a financial standpoint, but also to your point, these kids need to be home. They don't need to be at the hospital doing all the things that unfortunately hospitals have to do to kids and clinicians have to do to kids, to poke and prod and that sort of a thing. Well, Dr. Brown, so you obviously are very familiar, obvious to me, you're very familiar with Dr. Patel's research, but this isn't the only research that has been done. Can you share a little bit about other research, how this layers on perhaps, and maybe why you see it as being particularly unique and different?
Well, yeah, there we are. First off, before I answer that question, and I did see your raw data before you published, on average, how much savings per child was incurred on Wish Kids?
Yeah. Yeah, so on average, it was at least $20,000 or more, on average.
Yeah, I mean, these are not insignificant numbers. I think the important part about the study is prior to that, and in answer to your question, there was no good data. No one had really asked the question, and especially to that level. Everything was small snips of subjective studies. I think there was a study from Israel that looked at literally 30 or 40 children, and the question was, well, how do you feel after you had your wish? I mean, it was all subjective without any objective numbers and certainly without a control. There were other studies in the adult literature. There was one study which was a meta-analysis. A meta-analysis is where you take multiple similar studies but are all within different constructs, and you try to find common grounds where you can at least hopefully compare apples to apples when you're looking literally at a fruit tray of apples, oranges, and grapefruits, and maybe even a tomato in there too. The overall take-home message, and now this was a meta-analysis, and if I recall, this is like 100,000 adult patients with chronic illnesses. And the take-home message of that study was, if you feel better, you get better. Yeah. And it was what in medicine and throughout human history, we've always known that the witch doctor, the shaman, the snake oil salesman, they make somebody feel better and they get better. The placebo effect is real, and it's just the human experience. And then there was another limited study from a camp with critically ill children where, they, again, how do you feel after you went to this camp? Do you have positive feelings? And how was their overall subjective healthcare outcome? Again, limited studies, small numbers, nothing specifically asking the question, specifically for Make-A-Wish, specifically for medical outcome, specifically for economics of medical outcome, which was as provocative as this study.
Well, so, you're right when you say we don't really know what we're doing. We don't really understand the mind-body connection. We really don't understand the sort of what happens physiologically speaking. But you have seen so many kids that this has impacted. Can you talk a little bit about that and knowing this now, and also knowing from more a qualitative perspective, your experiences, what does it mean to these families? What do you see?
Well, I gave a discussion or a talk several years ago. Make-A-Wish, everybody equates to the wishes, oh, you go to Disneyland, or you do this, or you do that. And they equate our product to these visuals that they see in the media. But make no misunderstanding, the product that we deliver is hope. That is our product. The others are wrappings, they are mechanisms, they are delivery vehicles of hope. Families, they become almost paralyzed. They get into this catatonic state where they become so overwhelmed with this information that they can no longer make simple decisions. They are so consumed by this medical cataclysm of disaster that they can no longer have any conversation about what to do in the future because it's a day-by-day existence that they're dealing with. It gives them something to look at beyond the walls of their hospital visits, beyond the parameters of their latest CBC, their white cell count, their fevers, and gives them something to look at for in the future. Many families, unfortunately, their children pass, and what they have to remind them or to look at as, let's just say, a warm memory of that experience was the wish, or the experience of the wish, the journey of the wish. And it doesn't make the sting of the experience go away. But, we have an amazing capacity to focus on good things and to kind of compartmentalize and put the bad things in our life in the attic and not in the atrium as the very first thing when we open the door of what we're going to see. And Make-A-Wish is that really nice painting or that really nice rug in the atrium that we get to look at, rather than that really nasty lamp that we had to deal with that's now up in the attic.
Dr. Patel.
Yeah, I think that, when I go back to that young boy I told you about who's now an adult, living on his own, has a job, I asked him, I said, what was the best part about your wish, after everything's settled? And I often get emotional with this, but I'm going to try not to. He said, I was able to be a big brother again. He had 3 younger siblings, and he was able to give something back to them because he wasn't able to do so for years. And that is what he said propelled me. And that's what changed his life.
So now that you're, I'm going to come to Kris and Mercedes in just a second because I think it's important to get the parents' sort of experiential perspective on that. But now that we know, right? We've got data. It's I'll call it proven. I don't know if the lawyers would let me say that or not, but I'm going to call it proven. I'm going to call it proven. We know that it works. What works means is going to vary, but we've got some data to support that there are outcomes are changed because of it. What is our responsibility to that now? Like when you look at patients, new patients that come in to visit you, I mean, how do you not, you know it now, you can't unknow that.
Yeah, and I think that was probably the hardest part about the study was that we found 496 kids who seem to be, on paper, wish qualifiers that didn't get wishes. That keeps me up at night. I actually, even after that study went back, I'm like, we have to find them. We have to give them that. Unfortunately, some of them had passed. Some of them were over 18. Some of them have gotten care elsewhere. But now I've made it my life's mission to never miss a wish referral. Never. Because, and it's hard, right? This all went down, you guys, during the pandemic, or then the pandemic happened. And everything shut down. And we, I'll be honest, in Ohio, have not recovered from the wish. We just finally had another gala. Couldn't even do that. And, you know, that was a huge opportunity. We couldn't put kids on airplanes. We didn't know. And so we still haven't even recovered. And so now, you know, we have this huge quote-unquote backlog. But I don't care. I have to get these kids in the queue. I've got to find a way. We have to find a way. You are all responsible, whether you like it or not, by sitting in this room to make sure we don't miss these kids and that we get them through. Because that is our steward. That's our duty. We now know it is more than just a nice thing. You're going to help the kid get better. Not everybody. You can't do that with any treatment, right? There's no 100%. But if you told me a drug was twice as likely to make that kid's symptoms go away and make his life or her life better and make him or her be able to stay at home or go to school more, wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you want that kid to have it and do everything you can? And that's where I feel, Kim.
How can we ethically not do it?
I would say agreed. And I know that's very controversial. You know, we ran into a lot of disagreements, perhaps, with some of the folks at the higher levels, and that's okay. Everyone's entitled to their thoughts and opinions, but I can't unsee what I saw. I can't undo what was done. And so I can control one thing. And if you're a kid, I'm going to be darn sure you're getting that referral. And, you know, now we have a great process. You know, I literally turn to my social workers and I say, wish. They're like, got it. Boom. You know, intake form, this, info, good. All right. In the queue. You know, like it's a well-oiled machine. And I'd love to be able to have that same sort of system be put into place everywhere. So it doesn't take somebody like myself to have to think this is an eligible kid.
Well, the realities are we do have a lot of kids waiting, and you're right. I think all of us have moments where we lie awake at night and think about the one we didn't get to, or the ones we're not getting to. As you all know, our chapter is big, right? We're 161 counties. There's some very rural areas. I would go out on a limb to suggest that maybe there's some kids in our chapter that could benefit disproportionately based on what they think hope looks like in their lives on a number of sort of factors. So we've got to get to all those kids, and we've got to get back to a place where we're doing medical outreach, where we can make sure that folks know, that our medical community knows, and we can bust the myths of what it takes to qualify. Well, I'm going to shift over here to Kris and Mercedes for a minute. And so we know that your wish was a great experience. You guys, you know, talked about that so beautifully. But let's talk a little bit about some of the residual, you know, experiences. And so, Kris, if you could share with us, what kind of change did you start to see in Austin from the point that we called and said, all right, get ready. We're going to send you to, where was it? Costa Rica? No.
Nicaragua.
In Nicaragua. You're going to get your passport ready. You're going to Nicaragua. What kind of change did you start to see?
Yeah, so I think, Dr. Brown said it perfectly, this like hope you can seize onto. You're a parent, you're scared, you're frightened, you don't know if this is going to be okay. Your medical team is doing everything they can. And then you find out that you get to go do something that you never thought was possible. And I think that's what was really interesting to observe Austin is he had this idea like, hey, we've been watching this television show Survivor. I love Legos. I design these challenges and my Lego guys. Could I go design something for this TV show? And all of a sudden, like, what you thought was just this idea, this dream, this thing that, not realistic, all of a sudden it's like real, it's happening. And one of the tangible things too was Austin grew a broader support network. Because the wish for us didn't just, it's not just the family that benefits. Austin, the showrunner, the executive producers that he interacted with when we were there on location, like it changed them. I mean, they also were part of this experience. And then, what happened to Austin as a 12-year-old kid, they stayed in contact with him. He's now 22 and he's working for them. Every month from when we were there on location in Nicaragua in 2012, they reached out. Austin, how are you doing? How's middle school? Hey, Austin, you just started high school. How's high school? Wow, Austin, you finally now, your doctor's cleared you to play sports. He got to play sports and be a swimmer senior year in high school. First time in his life he was cleared to do that. So he had this like additional support group beyond just the family, the friends, the parents, and they became like mentors to him. And then you imagine like the kind of the compounding, cascading effect of a wish. And now, all these people that it touched, they're out advocating and hopefully, growing this overall impact. But it was just incredible. Like I say, literally the trajectory of his life changed from, and this kid that has struggled with these things to, wow, I could do this. I could, he's getting a degree in radio, television, film. I could be a director, a television producer. I can go do these things that were, as a kid, you have all these dreams, but can make a wish, help you overcome adversity, which is what all these kids have in common. And so that they can go pursue their dreams like all of us hope. And that's how it felt as a parent. So just incredible. I feel so lucky, blessed that, and Austin has been able to, again, persevere. And, this is his life story. Part of his life story is Make-A-Wish.
I know you've shared some other things with me and with us about not only social, emotional, but also physical growth. Austin, I mean, you can share that very briefly about how he blossomed.
Yeah, so if you've ever taken your kid to the pediatrician when they're little and they have a little growth chart and they show you on the graph, okay, well, here's what we project him to be. Austin was a child that was below the growth curve on his pediatrician's chart. So he was not even in less than the 1 percentile. So he probably would have ended up around 5 foot, 5'1". Well, he's almost 6 foot tall. I mean, it's incredible.
That's all because of the wish, by the way.
Yes. So, hey, the real physical outcomes, right?
Well, we have we do love Austin so much, and he is just such a dynamic young man, and love to see his relationship with that team at Survivor. So Mercedes, again, I mean, we like to think, thank you. We like to think that we can make sort of transformative change, right? You talked beautifully about how the wish. I don't even know if this is. And then you also sort of shared that Dory ended up living for a few more years. Obviously, we can't make a direct correlation to that, but perhaps share a little bit about the change that you did see the day of, as well as the reverberation. I mean, you talk about the change that Austin made in your family, as well as, Jeff Probst and the executive producers. I mean, you had nurses, that were almost just as excited
Yes, it was. If we can say that Austin's extra foot of growth is due to the wish, then I'll say those 2 extra years were because of the wish. So it's science. But for us, as I had mentioned before, our house was like a miniature satellite hospital. We had breathing equipment, we had heart monitors, and thankfully we had round-the-clock nursing help as well. And so our home health nurses were like Dorian's fairy godmothers. They were always there helping me be the mom that I was trying to be, not just for Dorian, but also for my other 2 boys who were in football and basketball, and it's something that we don't talk very often about, but oftentimes the siblings of these wish kids get the short end of the stick because mom and dad have to take their little brother or little sister to the ER again, or their little brother or little sister is in the hospital for 2 weeks, and we miss their Christmas performance or their big tournament because we have to, you can't be at 2 places at one time. And that's what the organization was so wonderful of, including my older boys, who at that time they were in 6th grade, including them into the wish process. They very much understood that the wish was for Dory, but the fact that they would bring them toys and check up on them and ask them, hey, how'd that tournament go last weekend? It really meant a lot because they finally got some attention that sometimes inadvertently we weren't giving them because of all the health journey obstacles that we were going through. And I still joke about this to this day, is that when we did have that private concert in our home with Neo, we invited all of Dory's nurses, all his fairy godmothers, and they all showed up looking like, Cosmopolitan magazine cover models. I'm like, who knew you were this pretty? Like, you never show up to work looking like this, and now, oh, we got a superstar, and you put on some makeup and stuff. So it was a very special event because it was a way of thanking them for being there with us during the worst of times and the scariest of times. And so they enjoyed it just as much as we as Dorian's parents and Dory himself did, because they were there with Neo on repeat on their phones when they were having a tough time with Dory. And it has affected our entire community. Everybody knows about this organization. You see all kinds of mentions in movies or in books and things, but to actually fully know the impact of a wish and to be firsthand in the process, it's completely eye-opening, and if it opens their hearts and it opens their minds. And so to have that front row seat to the wish process, I'm so thankful that all of Team Dory was involved in that, because it made a tremendous difference.
Well, as we think, okay, so we all know now, right? None of us can unknow the realities that we've either experienced personally or even were able to sort of prove through a data standpoint. And I'll go to Dr. Patel, and then I'll open it up for some questions. So what's next? I'm sure many of us, myself included, are sitting here thinking, how do we not know this? Like, how does the world, how are we not just how is every of the 14 million emails you guys get from Make-A-Wish, how is this not the subject line in all of them? Sorry about that. So what's next? What else do we need to know? What do we do with this?
Yeah, and I think about that a lot. I think there's a ton that can be done. I think to understand why we see what we saw, to tie in the story with the actual result to see of what specifically. The other things that we want to know are when is the best time for the wish to occur? Is there a better impact zone? And I don't know the answers to these things. The other thing we looked at in our study was we also wanted to make sure that there was no disparities of care. And I can thankfully say that there weren't. There wasn't any sort of gaming of the system. Kids on Medicaid were just as likely to get a wish offered to them. But there's a little bit more with that we want to make sure we're not doing. And then more importantly, how do we not miss those 496 kids? I know I can predict to a decent, number that you are likely to get a wish. I'm not going to take it out of your guys' hands, but I can at least hopefully help the providers get them to you to make that final determination. You know, there are signatures in your data in the electronic health record. I know that's there, all of that stuff. And then also, can this be seen? You know, one of the limitations of our study was it was one center in Ohio. I get that. That means a lot of kids, but I get that, you know. What about the kids in Arizona? Are we seeing the same things there, or Boston, or whatever, Texas, you know? But that's where it got really hard, because, you know, we got the Ari Shapiro interview that Kim mentioned was Thanksgiving weekend of 2019, I believe. Yeah, it was like the Wednesday. I remember because I had to run to the grocery store and get a bunch of stuff for Thanksgiving dinner, and my phone was like lighting up like crazy. And I'm like, why is everyone bothering me? Like, what is going on? Because I had no idea it was airing, you know. And that got some press, and then we did some stuff, and then March 2020, lost all the momentum. So I think there's maybe an opportunity to, you know, and I applaud Kim because she's the first one that's brought this back forward now that we're hopefully getting to a more normal life situation. I mean, I hadn't had a call in years about this study. In fact, like, which is, you know, I'm very proud of it. We gave grand rounds in different places. But then when Kim called, I was like, oh yeah, I did that, you know, like, oh, you guys still interested in this? Okay, you know, but like, yeah, I think it's important that we all can spread that word, you know, and when you're in your circles, many of you I met today are on the board here. So thank you for giving your time to such a great organization to help spread that wealth and knowledge. But, you know, it all starts with getting that referral. You gotta get the kid in the queue, right? And that's gonna take outreach. The outreach, and I know Kim has got a great plan and she's very passionate about it, and I, again, applaud her for that because it's hard right now with resource limitations and whatnot, but that's where we gotta start.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you for, you know, I feel like we've gotten to know each other a bit, and it's been lovely to hear and to feed off of your passion for it. So I'll open it up now. If anybody in the group here has any questions or anything specific we want to continue to dive into, I could go for hours on this, but I want to make sure. Yeah. Oh, here, Lawrence.
Sure. I'd be interested to know what type of pushback. You come up with all this data and it's right in your face and it's, you know, it's empirical. What type of pushback did you get as you start bringing additional awareness to it?
Do you want to take that?
I can take this.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Dr. Patel had the good sense not to be in the room for that one. There's several limitations. Number one, over the 43 years of Make-A-Wish's existence, there has not been a consistent database. And so one chapter to the next, their ability to track these kids and identify them is different from region to region. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is it was a lay organization, and we're talking about health information. And there are certain laws and parameters that prevent those two things from crossing lines. You know, there's confidentiality issues. Make-A-Wish families did not sign up to be part of a study. They did not sign up to be reapproached by somebody who wants to get data for research. And so going back and retrofitting those patients, those clients, those families, ethically is a real dilemma. And when the study came out, trust me, there were people banging at the doors wanting to get access to our database. And we just had to say no because it was too much too soon, and we needed to process what we had and focus on mission and understand that, yes, there's a lot more to be determined. That's the next chapter. Where do we go from here now that the pandemic is done, now that we're getting back to travel and getting back to business as usual? We can start doing that second tier to find out the value of what we do, okay?
Yeah, and the other thing that I would add is that, you know, it crosses into a line potentially, and I'm not here to say it's right or wrong for that line, but the line is if we do show this, and I compare it to a medication, insurance companies pay for that medication. Are they now on the hook to pay for a wish? These are hard questions. And, you know, there are a lot of executives from insurance companies that serve at Make-A-Wish, and I understand that's a very sticky wicket for them. I was like, no, I just think that if you're Aetna and you need a charity project, why don't you pick Make-A-Wish, because it's going to save your damn company money, you know? But that was just me, you know? But that message wasn't translated, and that was another kind of pushback that we got. You know, we got permission from our center but we're a research engine. Like the families have consented, so it was easy. But like Dr. Brown said, that's not necessarily the case in all places, you know.
Well, and I'll just simply add to it that the conversation's alive again. It's time to talk about it. It's time to push. And we can do that in ethical ways. We can do that in ways that should be able to get all the right people at the table where we can talk about it, to be able to push forward, to continue. We can't unknow this. Therefore, we have a responsibility to know more about what this mystery is, this inexplicable at times sort of progress is. And that can take decades, and that's fine. Let's do it. Let's give it the try. And how do we get the right people at the table to be able to have that conversation?
But it becomes bigger than just Make-A-Wish. I mean, the contribution to the medical community as to the outcome of positive experience is huge. That's what the medical community needs to know. That needs to know where to put, into social services and child life, and not just for kids, but for adults as well. And, as Dr. Patel said, you can kind of lose sleep over the wishes that you weren't granted. But it's real disturbing to think that over the past 30 years, how many opportunities did we miss? How many outcomes could we have changed? That gets to be very difficult. And, healthcare, as you mentioned, I mean, I took the antithesis of that. It's going to be where, United and Aetna and everybody else says they start intentionally steering everything to Make-A-Wish because, they know it may make their bottom line look better. And as I, told the national board, we're going to need a bigger boat because if and when that happens, that could be overwhelming. But the data, if you look at it, it is so provocative and it's so in your face. And it was just by simply asking a question that nobody had asked before, because I don't think anybody understood or appreciated exactly how much was being done.
Yeah, and I think the other big thing is that it's expensive to carry this work, right? And so you have to also look at, is it worth funding the research, or is it better to fill the wishes? I would say fill the wishes. But if it takes more of the research to convince more of the people, then yeah, we got to do that. But that, we did this on a shoestring budget, not trying to say, oh, woe is me or anything. But we did, and we did a lot of it on our own time because we thought it was worthwhile to do. And
It's like a summer project.
it was a summer project, and the reason why I got lucky, right? Because I had this team, everything, the stars were aligned. Like all of this stuff had to happen together, right? Like I happened to have this team, we were meeting regularly, and then all those other stories I told you all kind of happened together. And I was like, "You guys having a little extra time? You want to do this?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." And so it was a summer, and we just kind of put it together.
Dr. Hanners.
So I could get bogged down.
Awesome.
I won't get too bogged down. But, I am really curious about what you think about the duration of the effect, and then how can we harness deeper science of why it improves their outcomes for the kids who may not be eligible or because of their own health reasons for a wish.
No, that's really great, because those are also questions that we have is like, how long? We only looked at a 24-month time frame. I would love to know what happens in year 2, 3, 4, 5, and if we were able to follow those kids over that time would be amazing. I mean, when you hear about Austin, that's it right there, right? Like that says a lot to me. His life trajectory has changed. When I hear Mercedes, and it breaks my heart, but those 2 years still are impactful. So what specifically is better within that time frame are still things that we are unknown for. And I think that does speak to the duration, but also possibly the timing. I hear all the time when parents say to me, oh no, a wish isn't for me. Let the kid that deserves it. And I stop them dead in their tracks. I'm like, oh, you have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, do you want your kid potentially be twice as likely to get better and not come to the ED? Give them a wish. Let me do this for you, you know? So I think those are things. And again, so many unanswered questions. What is it specifically? You know, I had this idea that we were going to go to give, are you guys all familiar with Give Kids the World? It's where, you know, the Wish Kids, and, you know, majority of the Wish Kids obviously picked Disney World. And in our study, 75% picked a wish that went somewhere. We titled it Go, Meet was the other one. You know, we had different categories. So I had this idea that we're going to go to, remember this? We were going to go to Give Kids the World, and we were going to give them a survey. We're going to consent them and do this stuff and give them a survey on entry. And then 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, look at that same survey of quality of life to see what changes happened. Again, that's a multi-million-dollar study, right? But we wanted to do things like that, that I think, to get to those answers.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more questions to be asked. Let's keep asking those questions. We are at time, and I would just say thank you all so much for, I know it happens fast, thank you all so much for all of your just forthcoming, and I would just add that we can really get overwhelmed by the kids that we missed. I do. We can get overwhelmed by the need that's out there, but I can't help it as you're talking. We're being reminded of the old adage, there's 2 perfect times to plant a tree. 25 years ago and today. I think we started to plant a tree today. So thank you all.